Hello and welcome back to the Punchers Chant podcast, and welcome to our 2024 in review. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about everything that happened in 2024, the best moments, knockouts, fighters, promoters, all that good stuff, as well as having a look forward to 2025, some fights and fighters to keep an eye on next year. Before we jump into the sort of awards, I suppose we're nominating our official what year was 2024 in terms of boxing? It was unbelievable. We've had an undisputed heavyweight fight and the rematch. We've had an undisputed light heavyweight fight. It's really been one of the best years in recent years. I know we said that last year, but I don't know if you agree with me, Ben.
Yeah, like you said, we've had so much to look forward to across 2024. Like every month pretty much we've had like a big event to look forward to, and it's like you're looking forward to one big sort of show and then that's over with and you've got the next one like a few weeks after. So it's been like no like sort of slowing down either across the year. And the thing is with it, like the way they've sort of planned it all out, it's as if it's just getting better and better. So like 2025 is shaping up to be just as good, if not better, than 2024. It's just been, yeah, in terms of being a boxing fan, I don't think there's been a better year in boxing for a long, long time.
I just can't believe when you look back on the year that we've seen and you look at the fights that's happened, and they've all happened in the space of 12 months. It's just mind blowing. And some of the best fights, I think, in the last century have happened within 12 months. Like you said, Sam, at the top of the show, we've had two undisputed fights in the modern day boxing term, with all the egos, with all the promoters and all that. That would have never happened. And this bloke from Saudi Arabia, Turki Al-Sheikh, has made it happen. And it's not even just that. The undercards have been so good as well, full of talent, 50-50 fights, which we all want to see. We all want to see 50-50 fights all the time. And I think 2024 was the start of now into 2025 where we're going to see more competitive fight cards from top to bottom, and prospects are going to be hopefully getting tested a little bit more earlier on in their career as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the back of that, our first sort of talking point is fight of the year. Which single fight has this is the big one, isn't it? People love to be part of fight of the year. It's a real. And we'll start off with Joe. Actually, no, I'm going to kick it off by saying mine. Fabio Wardley, Fraser Clarke, or Fraser Clarke, Fabio Wardley. The bad blood, as it was named. The ring was stained in such bad blood. It was just like a proper 12-round war, knockdowns, draw, close scoring. It had everything, and I think, especially compared to the rematch which we saw in Saudi Arabia, it just had everything you needed and more. And of course, it's a British title fight, and they don't disappoint ever. I'm sure that's going to come back to bite me, and we'll get a really crap British title fight soon. But they don't tend to disappoint, and I think instantly, I've made a long list this year of fights when I've watched it and be like, that could be a fight of the year contender. That could be a fight of the year contender. And I looked at the list, and it was just, this one was the only one I thought I could pick. It was so good, and on domestic soil, which I suppose gives it some bonus marks as well.
Yeah, I think in 2024 we were treated to a lot of good British title fights, but I think that definitely was the top. That first fight between them two was so good to watch, and it just set up the rematch perfectly. It didn't quite go the way that anyone was expecting, but yeah, it was such a good watch, that one.
The back and forth between them as well, and the build up to that first fight was really, really good. And that was the theme of last year, wasn't it? British title fights were the sort of all, if they weren't in your top 10, surely we all had about 3 or 4 of them in our top 10. And it's something about that title that gets people going. And we've seen it in Wales with the Welsh title fights with Angelo Dragoni against Jake Tinklin. For me, that's, if you're going domestically for us in Wales, that was up there. But yeah, that's the fight that when you look back on last year, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that fight now, because he was just full of so many good fights. And if I can say my one now, I think it's kind of linked to Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clarke in the way that it was the co-main event, the rematch for what was for me the most technically the best boxing fight. It wasn't a fight, it was a boxing fight, and it was Artur Beterbiev against Dmitry Bivol. And for me, just watching that fight, it was just incredible. Just watching them going back and forth, how Bivol was just on. It was so good. And you look back on that year now, we get to see it in a couple of weeks now as well. And yeah, for me, that was the fight of the year. And the undercard as well was definitely up there for show of the year as well.
I'm surprised you went for that. I don't, not in the way that I think it doesn't deserve to be, because it was like a proper 12 round, like engrossed, not taking my eyes off it fight. But I just didn't expect that from you, Harry. I thought you'd go for a sort of, I don't know.
A Johnny Fisher, Dave Allen.
Yeah, I don't know. Respect from me though. That was an unbelievable fight. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think I know. Well, that was down as a fight scene this year now. I think Johnny Fisher and Dave Allen, but yeah, that was a good fight as well. But no, Bivol and Beterbiev, I think, like you said, you were on the edge of your seat watching it because Beterbiev has got that power that at a split second you switch off, he can knock your lights out. And we obviously didn't see that because Bivol is incredible at what he does. And yeah, it was just a really good fight. And it was 36 minutes where I think I didn't sit back in my seat at all. And it's the sort of fight at the beginning of 2024 was just a dream and just an imagination of, imagine if these two can fight and get it on. And they got it on, and they definitely delivered.
Is it me?
Yeah. Last one to go.
Oh, well, I was sitting down yesterday thinking of all the fights we watched through 2024, and I'd love to actually know how many rounds of boxing we watched through the year, but a bit of recency bias in me was looking at the Stephen McKenna and Lee Cutler fight up in Liverpool, because that was so good to watch. I think that's definitely the best fight I watched live in 2024, but the fight I went for was Fury Usyk 1, just because of the whole build up to it, the spectacle of it all. The two of them, the best heavyweights out there at the moment, and to have an undisputed fight after, was it 30 years, waited so long, it was the first in our lifetime. And sometimes when you get fights that big, they don't always live up to the build up. But I think that fight was like, it was like a movie type of fight. It just went so well. It was back and forth. They both had their moments. That round 9, everyone will remember that round 9. It's such a historic fight in the sport. And yeah, I think that's just why it edged it for me as the fight of the year. Obviously, it's quite an obvious one because it was the biggest fight of the year. But also, I just thought it really lived up to expectations as well.
Yeah, the rematch was never going to live up to that quality. And it was, the first one was a better fight. Even though actually I thought the second one was probably slightly more close in terms of the decision. I thought Usyk won that first one by more of a margin than I thought he won the second one. But it was just, it's like we couldn't imagine what it was going to look like because we hadn't seen it, and we hadn't seen one in so long. It's like, what does an undisputed heavyweight fight even look like? And that's what it looks like. And if that is what it looks like, then, give me as many as possible. Because like you say, it was up there for one of the best fights of the year, but certainly probably the most memorable fight of this century. I think it will go down as, and I think it probably deserves to.
Yeah, I think it just had so many eyes on it, and everyone who's a boxing fan, or even sort of casual boxing fans, will know where they were when they were sitting down and watching that fight in 2024.
Yeah,
and it's the sort of fight as well, Fury and Usyk, that the first time around it was on the front of newspapers. When has boxing ever been on the front of newspapers? Boxing News did 2 magazines to collect. It was so big, and like you boys said, it lived up to the hype. And when you have a big build-up for a fight, normally it can be a bit of a stinker come fight night, but this one wasn't. And like you said, round 9, for me, it only seems like a couple of weeks ago, because that's how strong it is in the memory and how you remember it. And yeah, the thing is now about them two now, they've got a big 2025 ahead, and I know we're going to discuss that in a bit, but yeah, what a fight.
Well, on to the next section, show of the year. So which single event, single show captured our imaginations. I think it's probably a bit of a cheat code because this is probably going to end up, I don't know what you boys have down, but it's probably going to end up being 3 Riyadh season shows, I imagine, because they've done it to a degree that no one else can. If not, then fair play for finding one. For me, I've gone for one we've talked about already, which is Beterbiev versus Bivol. I don't know why, but when I look back and think about the cards I've sat down and watched in their entirety live, like I did with that one, I don't know why. I have a memory of it being a really enjoyable show. And it had lots of different things. There was obviously the Ben Whittaker and Liam Cameron kind of drama. There was the huge knockout from Fabio Wardley and things like this that I didn't necessarily expect. And I was pleasantly surprised by. And then, even a Sky Nicholson, Raven Chapman being the first female world title fight in Saudi Arabia and Sky putting on an absolute clinic against Raven Chapman. I'm just looking elsewhere on the card. Jair Pataya finishing Jack Massey. Chris Eubank Jr. finishing Kamil Shurameta. Just for me, even if it wasn't necessarily the one with the biggest names, though you could even argue it was that, but I think just such an enjoyable show from top to bottom, from what I remember of it.
Yeah, I think it was just a really high level of fights throughout the night, and obviously topped off with what was probably the best boxing match of the year between two of the best to do it. And even, like you said, with the thing with Ben Whittaker and Liam Cameron, it just makes it memorable as well. You think back to those moments and that card, and you instantly have flashbacks to just sitting there watching it and just trying to figure out what the hell's gone on.
Yeah.
Proper Royal Rumble, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit.
And Liam Cameron, wasn't it? Jesus.
Wow, I'm interested to see what you boys have gone to try and top that, Harry. What's your...
Well, I've gone for Knockout Chaos. I think for me that was definitely up there as one of the best cards of the year. Just looking through it, the names on there. I hope I've got the right card as well, because the names in it. Anthony Joshua against Francis Ngannou. The pressure that was on AJ in that fight was incredible. Ray Vargas and Nick Ball, a split decision draw. Controversial. So there's a talking point there. Joseph Parker got that decision over Zhilei Zhang, and now he's fighting Daniel Dubois in a couple of weeks' time. Jack McCann, Lewis Green. What a knockout by Lewis in that fight. Obviously, for the Welsh fans, he wasn't the best of nights because obviously Gavin Gwynn lost. But what an opportunity he had. I thought Israel Madrimov that night was really, really impressive. And when you look at all the names down the list, they're all big names. And it was just an incredible card, top to bottom.
Yeah, when I said that it was likely to be a Riyadh season, and you kind of looked at me a bit, I thought, he hasn't, has he? But it wasn't going to be anything else, was it? Because it was... Nah. And that one, I remember it well because it was sort of named Knockout Chaos, but there wasn't actually a huge amount of knockouts on the card compared to what you could have expected from it. But I do remember us saying in the review afterwards that it was a really great card, even despite there wasn't knockouts. But that AJ knockout is, I mean, that's in the conversation for one of the knockouts of the year, because that's a man no one's seen go down like that and seriously crumpled him. So could be possibly a shout for that one. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about that card, was that AJ knockout, and we all thought AJ was back to his best and was going to go on to knock everyone out that way, but didn't quite work out.
Not quite, no.
As planned. But I also went for a show out in Saudi, but I've gone for the Matchroom v Queensberry 5v5 again, just for the build up and spectacle. Like, what was it, a few weeks before or a few months before the fight night, all the fighters come to the press conference wearing the masks, and they sort of showed their identity one by one, and it was just the whole build up. Like, we were doing podcasts and all other boxing outlets were sort of putting their dream fights together from the two promotions and who they thought was going to be there on the night, and it was a really good show to watch as well. Obviously Queensberry, it was quite one-sided for Queensberry in the end, but you even had, like, it was sort of the making of Daniel Dubois that night with his big win, and Hamzah Sheeraz as well. Like, had some really big performances on that card, and I think it's made me excited for future 5v5 cards as well. It's like made boxing fans now think about what we could have in the future similar to those cards.
Yeah, it's a great format as a thing. I think that's one of the things we mentioned a couple of times actually is the whole format thing. We've obviously with things like Magnificent Seven, things like that, and how they just kind of add another element to boxing, and that 5v5 is a brilliant one. I think I seen somewhere we are due to possibly get one next year. Again, which would be just brilliant. And I think people have been talking about like a boxer matchroom 5v5 or a golden boy matchroom 5v5 and all of these sorts of things. But I'm going to be honest, Queensberry versus matchroom, it's the one, isn't it? They're so good. The history that goes back, even if they are, best mates these days, at least when the cameras are rolling, it's so exciting. And that was a phenomenal card. Not to mention we had a brilliant Welsh title fight on the same night that we were watching, but we were watching that up there and on our phones, watching some brilliant boxing.
Yeah, it was a really good night of fights, and I'm just excited now for, like I said, the future ones we could have. I really want to see a Queensberry and Boxer one just because of Frank Warren, Ben Shalom's beef going on at the minute. But yeah, there's so many good opportunities they've got to do a card like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Prospect of the year. Now we've defined prospect. There's a few different ways you can define this, whether it's age or, fights, whatever. I've gone for less than 8 fights. We've said you have to pick your prospect from. Anyone above that, and we're deeming them a seasoned professional. So to say that, on that, we'll start with you, Harry. Who have you gone for as your prospect of the year last year?
Well, when the message came into the group chat, I didn't read it properly, so I put Abdullah Mason, but then I reread it and I thought, oh, he's had more than 8 fights. He's actually had double, 16 fights, 14 knockouts.
He's a journeyman at that rate.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I've gone for a man that has only had one professional fight. I believe he's trained by Lee Selby, Romeo Costa, and he was expected to fight on that December 7th show in Swansea, and I think he made his debut on the GBM show, if I remember rightly, and up in the York Hall. And from that, I thought, yeah, this kid's something special, and I'm going to keep a close eye on him come 2025, because I believe he's going to be fighting now February time. So that's the one I've gone for.
Fair enough. It's an interesting one. You've gone for 1-0. You had a high ceiling with the 8-0, so I respect it. You've gone bold, gone for a big claim. I've gone for Giorgio Visioli as my prospect of the year. And I don't know if that is just because every time he fought, I kind of paid attention. Every time I saw him on a card, I thought, this is going to be a good fight, or this is going to be a good performance. And he didn't really let that down. He had 3 fights, I believe, in 2024, all against fighters with winning records. Let's not pretend they're not title holders or anything like this, but he's not expected to be at that stage of his career. And he's just built himself really well. He looks so good every single time he fights. And every single time he fights, I look forward to the next time he gets put on a show. I do think he'll have a big 2025, so I possibly could have put him for later on when we say someone to watch in 2025. But I just thought he had a really good year with 3 big wins against good, decent fighters at this stage of his career, and did so in pretty emphatic fashion in all 3 fights.
Yeah, I was going to say, he always seems to get like a statement stoppage on every card he's been on so far in 2024. But the fight that I've gone for, I feel like I've cheated a bit with this one, but I'll have to give credit to Jared Parry. But I've gone for Andy Cruz. Obviously, still only 4-0 as a professional, but he's been so talented every time you watch him. Obviously, a very talented amateur and won pretty much everything there is to win at the amateur level, but he's going to make for a fantastic pro, and I'm sure 2025 now is where you'll see him start to pick up regular titles.
Yeah, it's a brilliant shout. Fair play to Jared for calling that one as early as he did. I forget when we had Jared on here, but I feel like it's like over a year ago now, I think. And so he called that one really early. But then again, the guy won an Intercontinental title in his first fight. It's not exactly a sort of really niche shout. It's one maybe reflecting on that we should have known rather than it being a great shout from Jared. Who knows? But yeah, brilliant shout. Do you know what? I nearly had one similar, but he was one fight off it. I thought he was 8-0. Was Yafai. He was 9-0. He was one fight away from being counted, which would have been a silly shout anyway, because he's not a prospect. But those amateurs, they do have that kind of different thing because they've had such a pedigree, so they come into the professional ranks almost a few steps ahead. And yeah, Andy Cruz is not only had a very good 2024, but again, is probably going to have a very good 2025, you'd imagine.
And we don't have to wait long
definitely.
for him as well. He's fighting on the 25th of January. So we get to see him again. And then hopefully we can see him out again in maybe April, and he can push on to the back end of the year where we could be talking about an Andy Cruz who potentially could be 6-0, 7-0, pushing for a world title fight.
Yeah, which is mental to say, but it's highly, highly possible. Next up, knockout of the year. This is the big one. This is the one where anyone who's listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube, you open up another tab so you can keep listening, but just so you can search up the knockouts, so you can see what we're talking about. And when we were just about to start recording this, and me and Ben were just chatting, I thought, Joe, actually, I should probably watch my knockout back that I had down. And now I've watched it back, I'm 100% confident this is my knockout of the year. Lucas Bardi versus Ashton Silve in, I think it was Tampa, Florida, I think it was. It is just, still now, when I watch it back, I can't tell which shot it was that put him out. Because he lands like a 3-4 shot combination, and you can just tell that his opponent is knocked out, but stood up still, and just kind of slowly goes down like a tower block. And I still don't know which shot it was that put him out, but whichever one it was clean as it comes. And there was a couple more after it to seal the deal. So I've gone for that one because I just think when I watched it, and now when I watch it now, it's just like, that was just like a kind of, it has a reaction. It's shocking. It's like, wow, that was big. Though I think it was on a Jake Paul show on a most, which is negative marks for that. But I think it was actually, I think it was the MVP fighter that got knocked out. So, swings and roundabouts. So I'll take that one definitely as my knockout of the year so far.
Yeah, there's been a lot of good knockouts this year, to be fair, but it's another one where you've seen so many, like you're trying to pick is the sort of best one, but the one I've gone for is the Daniel Dubois against AJ, just because I think it was unexpected for most people. I think Dubois was definitely going into that fight as the underdog, despite being the world champion. Obviously dropped him, was it 3 or 4 times before that knockout, and then he got hurt himself. Like, he was backing up towards that corner after he'd taken a shot, and he just landed a massive right hand, and he was flattened from there, and it was just such a good ending to what was probably the biggest fight domestically in the UK in 2024.
Yeah, what I liked about that one is that you've got the fact that AJ, you could tell, was clearly going for a big shot of his own just before, and Dubois' shot was just slightly straighter, and so hit slightly earlier. It just really felt like kind of like a proper shootout. Like, we both get one more shot each to end this. One of us is going to win it. Who's it going to be? And you've got to respect Daniel Dubois for it, because AJ, a big shot from AJ is something, as Ngannou I'm sure will tell you, is not something you want to be feeling. But he said, no, you can hit me, but I'll hit you harder. And that's what he done.
Yeah, it was just a real sense that night that it was Daniel Dubois' night. It was from the ring walk, he just looked like a confidence of a man that knew he was getting the win, even though most people in our arena and everyone watching at home did not expect him to pick up the victory. But yeah, he had a few big wins in 2024, but that was by far and away, I think, the biggest one of his career.
Yeah.
And let's not forget as well, he was labelled a couple of years back a quitter. And look at him now. He's on top of the world, and he's gone into the ring and gone straight up to Usyk and saying, "Oh, you're next," and all that, without even focusing on Joseph Parker. I think he's brilliant, and he's something that you need in this heavyweight division and in boxing in general, where you've got someone that, can bring in an audience. And what he says sometimes is quite funny. I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter where people have said he's been planning what he was saying to Usyk in the mirror for weeks. But no, what an incredible performance that night. And for me, talking about incredible performances, I've gone for one that happened just recently in the middle of December. Bruno Soras a Frenchman who's never fought outside of France before in his professional career, over Jaime Munguia over in Tijuana in Mexico. He was down in round 2 and then obviously got that massive knockout win in round 6. And yeah, for something that a lot of people were saying about Munguia, saying they can't believe that he's dropping down to this level because he's only lost to Canelo, and he's now dropping down to fight someone who's never fought outside of his of France, and then he gets knocked out. And now the questions are, where does Jaime Munguia go, and where does Sheeraz go now from here? And yeah, for me, that was knockout of the year, and also you can make the argument that it could be upset of the year as well.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got that as a category, and I completely forgot about that fight because it almost didn't feel like it actually happened. Because I think, obviously, because with the time difference as well, so we wouldn't have watched it live, we would have just seen it the next day. You kind of see it on Twitter and you think, what? Did that happen? Like, did he actually? And it was, to be fair to you, an unbelievable shot to put out a man like Jaime Munguia. It was a cracking shot and a cracking upset. So there's 3 such good ones. I'm gonna go watch back both yours now after this as well, just so I can reminisce. I feel like I'm gonna spend like multiple hours after this recording just watching moments of 2024 that each of us have gone for. Next up, promoter of the year. Who are we giving? Who's been the best promoting their own shows on other shows? Who's done the best job? We'll start with you, Ben. Who do you think?
For promoter of the year, I've gone for Frank Warren. I think obviously he's been involved in the big shows out in Saudi, but I think he's also done the best domestically with the Magnificent 7 cards. I think they've been the best cards that we've had in the UK this year, and he's put on some very good fights with the likes of Brad Pauls and Nathan Heaney alongside others. And in terms of the fighters he's got in his stable now, you look at Daniel Dubois, Hamzah, Sheeraz, he's starting to collect in terms of the best fighters coming out of Britain at the moment. He's pretty much got them all underneath his banner. So I think in terms of 2024, he's been the winner overall.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've gone for the same. I think not only his performances in Saudi with the 5v5 and just hoarding, collecting heavyweight prospects like no one else can get their hands on them. If you're another promoter and you have even just one heavyweight, you've done all right, because Frank Warren's got absolutely all of them. And I just think, he's done some really, really great things with a lot of his fighters. Hamzah Sheeraz has obviously come up and done really well. And not just that, but I've been to, I think, 2 Queensberry shows this year, the York Hall, Sam Noakes, and the Magnificent 7 in Wembley, and they were both great shows. And I think that is a little bit of bias because I've been there, and Eddie won't let us in. So that's what you get for not letting us in. So I'm definitely, Frank Warren for me.
Promoter, well, to be a little bit different then, I'll go for Eddie Hearn. I was going to say Daniel Francis, but he's a
matchmaker.
He's a matchmaker, exactly. So we can't say him. I think for me, Eddie Hearn, though, when I look back on the year and I look back on like the last couple of weeks of 2025, that Monaco card stands out for me as, again, one of the best cards of the year from top to bottom. But I think for Eddie Hearn, the shows he's been putting on this year, they've been highly competitive shows on a more regular basis, whereas I think Frank Warren's gone for, obviously the Magnificent 7 shows are really, really good, really, really strong, and I like them. But I think Eddie Hearn's more consistent in putting on competitive fights over the 12 months. But I can't argue against Frank Warren, being promoted of the year. When you look at what he did in May, winning the 5v5 and all that, and some of the best fights in my top 10 are actually on Queensberry cards. But I think Eddie Hearn, for me, just on the more, I like competitive fights, 50-50 fights where, when we make our predictions, you have to sit on the fence and all that. But yeah, Eddie Hearn for me.
Fair. I think what that basis is on, and is a completely fair argument, is, do you judge a promoter on how high his highs were, or how low their lows were? And I do think that's probably fair, that the bottom end Matchroom shows were probably better than the bottom end Queensberry shows. And he's had some, like, keeping Rhiannon Dixon and Terry Harper on as a main event, despite, 3 cancellations of main events, 2 venue changes. like they all sorts being messed around, but they stuck by those girls, and it was a brilliant fight in the end. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ones you could have gone for, but Frank and Eddie are just at the top, aren't they? They are the two that really do it. And do you know what? We'll give a special shout out to Johnny Clarke at Top Tier. What they've been able to do, get the DAZN deal, the middleweight tournament they did, or super middleweight tournament they did, some of the great shows that they're putting on with the budget and the facilities that they've got compared to these guys. You know, a couple loan deals from Matchroom have certainly helped them out, but yeah, some brilliant work from Johnny. And I think another, again, one we're going to say a big 2025 ahead for Johnny Clarke. So big respect to those guys. This is the one next, the important one, Fighter of the Year. This is the one that, you know, every fighter hopes they get the phone call from their agent saying, boy, the Puncher's Chance have said you their Fighter of the Year. You know, this is the one they've been waiting for all year. To kick it off, Harry, who has the honour? And no, you can't say Johnny Fisher.
Well, after his last performance, yeah, that's definitely taken that award away from him. No, for me, sticking in the heavyweight division, though, I've gone for Alexander Usyk just because of, you know, he had a lot of doubt going into that first fight against Fury, and to overcome Fury and to nearly stop someone that has never been stopped before in his career and really, really hurt him in that round 9 was just incredible. And then in the rematch, he just showed that he's one of the best boxers on the planet at the moment. And he's definitely, for me, pound for pound number 1. And he was Fighter of the Year for me.
It's hard to argue, really.
Yeah.
Undisputed heavyweight champion. Yeah, that's all you needed to say. And we would have no case to argue with you on that. But it's more than that. Everyone loves Usyk. He's beaten everyone's favourite fighters in their own backyard, but you still can't help but love him.
Yeah, when have you ever seen that before? That he's taken out all of your Brits, and us Brits still love him. You know, it's mental, but yeah, he's incredible. And hopefully now we see him again, because there's a lot of rumours after that rematch with Fury. Do we see Usyk and Fury back in the ring? I think we do, but it just depends who against, and that's the question now that you'll be asking.
Yeah, it's a big one. What about you, Ben? Who are you going for?
I've already spoken about my fighter. He had my knockout of the year, and he's also my fighter of the year. It's Daniel Dubois. I think just looking at the year he's had 3 massive wins. I think every time pretty much he went into that fight, he was considered as the underdog going into it because of his sort of prior fight 18 months ago to 2 years ago. And now you're looking at him as a world champion, 1 fight away from an undisputed heavyweight title fight and a possible rematch with Usyk and getting revenge there. And like in terms of the year of 2024, I don't think a fighter's had a better trajectory on their career. So for 2024, I've gone for Daniel Dubois.
Wow, it's fair enough. Big Daddy Dubois, you know, it's hard to argue about, you know, we just didn't expect it, did we, at the start of 2024? It more than anything, it's, you know, we expected Usyk to be at least 1 fight away from undisputed heavyweight champion, and he won that 1 fight. Whereas Daniel Dubois, we just didn't expect to do what he did and beat AJ at Wembley, and just some brilliant moments. So yeah, again, it's hard to argue with it. And I've stayed with the same stable, and again with a fighter I've mentioned already. I've gone for Hamzah Sheeraz. I think the 3 wins he's picked up this year against Williams, and Denny, obviously Liam, Ammo, and then Tyler Denny, and the fashion in which he's done all 3. Liam Williams, a brilliant fighter who's had a great career, but Hamzah Sheeraz proved he was a fair few steps above him. And I think he finished him with a jab in that fight, or a lead hand, Lania. And then against Ammo Williams, it was a more difficult test. It went more of the distance, but he still fought well, you know, fought hard, and then got a big knockout in the 11th. And then Tyler Denny dared to dream, and Hamzah Sheeraz fairly quickly ended that dream, because it was, again, in Wembley, a brilliant performance. And he's done all of that, I think, with so much humility and respect outside the ring, the way he carries himself as a person and as a fighter. I think not only has he had a phenomenal year, but if there's any young people out there who looking to a fighter to follow, maybe not Chisora, Fury, pick Hamzah Sheeraz because the man is a. And how is he a middleweight as well? This is the other thing.
Massive.
If just the fact that he makes middleweight, he deserves some kind of trophy because he is huge, really, really big, and I think again, I keep saying it, but a guy who's probably going to have a phenomenal 2025. I predict him to pick up at least probably 1 or 2 world titles next year, and I don't think that would be a stretch to say at all.
No, I think you forget sometimes as well that he was chosen to be Queensbury's captain for the 5v5, so showed how much trust Frank Warren had in him and the belief, and he knew where he was going. Because in that test against Hammer Williams, many people had Hammer Williams as a slight favourite going into that one because of his probably bit more experience and amateur pedigree, but he showed what he was worth that night, and he's definitely going to have a big 2025.
Absolutely. Speaking of a big 2025, we're going to come up with a few things, a fighter to watch and a prospect to watch in 2025 for you guys to keep your eyes on. We're going to brush 2024 under the carpet like it's a Ryan Garcia Osterine test and just pretend it never happened. On to the next big year, on to the next set of fights. I mean, starting off pretty quick in early 2025 anyway already, but one fight that needs to happen in 2025. We'll start with you, Harry.
Put me right on the spot there. I thought you would have gone to Ben because he's probably got the fight that everyone wants to happen in 2025. But no, for me, Inoue has to fight Akhmadaliev at some point this year. I think that's the fight to make. And Akhmadaliev looked really impressive in Monaco last time out, of course. Inoue now in a couple of weeks' time's fighting Sam Goodman. You know, he ruined our Christmas, didn't he? Because Christmas Eve was ruined because his opponent decided to get a cut, I want to say, in sparring. Obviously, he couldn't help it. But, yeah, it's good to see him back out soon. So, hopefully he gets through Sam Goodman. And then, obviously, last year as well, he did sign something with Turki Al-Sheikhan with Riyadh season. So, maybe, just maybe, we could see that on a Riyadh season card some point in the back end of 2025.
Yeah, would be nice. And it does need to happen. It feels like one that you're just like, just fight, guys. Like, just make it happen. And I will never ever say no to an Inoue fight. No one has ever said, "Oh, do you want to see an Inoue fight?" And I've gone, "Do you know what? No, not really. I always want to see him fight. If I can have him out every week, I would." I have a feeling, but we've gone for the same one, haven't we? We've gone for the tap in, the Haaland 1 yard out, Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury. It's the fight that we should have seen in 2020, 19, 2021, 22, every year since. This is a fight that we should have seen. And now it just makes more sense than ever. It really does. It's the biggest fight for both guys. They've both come off the back of losses that they'll be disappointed with, and in Fury's case, a rematch loss as well. So just make it happen. And it's probably not going to, but make it happen in the UK, please. Fingers crossed. But if not, I don't care. It could happen on the moon, and I don't care. I'll watch it anywhere.
Yeah, I think out the whole of 2025, that is the one fight I want to see. Like, since we've started this podcast, myself and hundreds of other people have been calling for that fight, and I've said it before. Like, this fight doesn't need titles. Neither of them have got world titles now, and I still think if you get that fight together next summer, then that is the biggest fight of the year regardless. It'll definitely be the biggest fight in Britain. It'll be one of the biggest fights in British boxing history, and it is probably a bit later than what we would have liked to have seen them. They probably, at the latter stage of their career, we probably would have liked to have seen them more in their peak, but it's still a massive fight that sells 10 times over in the UK. I think it'll end up in Saudi if it does inevitably happen, but just to see it and to sort of get that rubber stamp of who is the best out of Fury and AJ is what we need to see in 2025.
Yeah. I live for it. It's going to happen. Fingers crossed. Do you think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think it will.
If it doesn't, it's like a bit like AJ and Wilder, ain't it? Where it should have happened and it never did.
Yeah.
But I honestly do believe that we do see that this year. 2025, I do believe we see Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury. And back, 4 years ago, both of them held world titles. This could have been for undisputed, remember? And now they're going to be fighting for nothing, which is just, is mental in itself. But
That's the thing with boxing sometimes, isn't it? You wait too long and those opportunities pass you by and they're never going to get that opportunity for undisputed again. It's the same with AJ and Wilder. They could have had an undisputed fight at one point and that never happened either. But I think we finally get into the age in boxing now where we are getting those fights that everyone's calling for. But it's a shame for them too that it's not going to be a world title fight, but it still sells massively regardless, I think.
Yeah, it really does need a world title to sell that fight. Next year, one fighter to watch in 2025. It can be someone you think's gonna, but obviously we've got the prospect to watch in 2025. So I suppose in theory this is someone who we think is going to have a big year, or maybe someone who's had a big 2024 and then just needs to seal the deal in 2025, which is more so what I've gone for. No surprises. I've gone for Sam Noakes. I've supported the guy from the start. I watched him obviously in twice this year, which I think he's the only fighter I've probably seen other than guys who are fighting in Wales on every show and sort of thing. And I just think he's had such a good year, and he's always felt like he's just one or two fights away from a world title fight. And now, after a huge win in Wembley Arena, he really is one fight away from a world title fight. And I hope he gets it. Maybe in Riyadh would be nice for him. Maybe Turki Al-Sheikh made the wrong choice picking a Queensberry lightweight to have as his favourite fighter, because his favourite lost to Josh Padley in Wembley, and my favourite won it in Wembley Arena. So that's who I think you should keep an eye on in 2025. That's not it's not a bold claim of a small fighter you've never heard of. It's an easy tap in, but keep an eye on him. He's going to win a world title in 2025. That's my genuine belief.
Yeah, I think we've said it for a long time. He's sort of been one step off our world title shot, but surely next year is the time he gets it. But in terms of my fight, if yours is a tap in, then mine's a tap in with no goalkeeper in the net as well, because I've gone for Moses Atoma as my fighter to watch in 2025. He's had an incredible 2024 already. Obviously, that massive stoppage win against Dempsey McKean in someone who took Hrgovic the whole 12 rounds in his fight with him. And I believe that 2025 is the year that Moses Atoma picks up a world title.
Wow. Do you know what? I was going to say, it's not that outrageous a claim, really. It's really not.
No.
I think he does have the ability right now to challenge those guys. And so why not? Give him it. He's got time to recover if he doesn't. Yeah, I'll back it.
The claim is, though, the outrageous claim, does he beat Mike Tyson's record of becoming the youngest ever world champion? Because I think he's only got a couple of months. You reckon?
I don't. How soon does he have to do it, though?
It might not be a big world title,
May?
but I think he will get a world title.
I don't know if he could do it by May.
Do you reckon the governing bodies are gonna, go to Usyk now? You're gonna fight. You need to fight him, or you have to vacate.
Nah, probably not. Though I do think I know the. I think the IBO have been listed as one of Ring Magazine's partners, and obviously that has the connection.
Justice Hooney, can't he, for a vacant belt at some point?
I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, well, I know it's not a world title, but I wouldn't be surprised if he fought for the WBA or WBO, whichever one is regular, which was won recently. So I think he'll certainly get his hands on some big titles, but I just think May will be too soon when you look at the kind of world title picture. They might not be able to squeeze it in. But that's something that maybe Mike Tyson didn't necessarily have to deal with in the same way as that kind of that same politics around. So I think you'll do really well for anyone to ever beat that record, just because of the politics surrounding boxing these days. It would be nice though, wouldn't it? It would be really nice.
For me, just because he's got probably one of the best names in boxing at the moment, Tara Moana. I want to see a lot more of him, especially with David Diamante being the ring announcer, because I think it's incredible. But he definitely, for me, stood out in 2024 as a heavyweight coming through that you need to keep an eye on, because he did push Jalolov quite a bit in that. I want to say, was it a quarterfinals in Paris? it could have been quarterfinals or semi-finals, I can't remember, but he looks very special. Obviously made his new professional debut. He was like 4-0 before his fight over in Monaco, and he now fights tomorrow night in Australia. And yeah, I'm expecting Termoana to definitely make those step ups quite quickly. And yeah, he could be pushing by the end of, I wouldn't say 2025, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had some sort of international belt around his waist come the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, he has had a great year, and obviously doesn't count as a prospect because I think he's 6 fights now.
Yeah.
Or 6 fights, I think it would be. So he counts for that fighter as a watch, and it's going to be exciting to watch him. Any heavyweight coming through, you kind of have to take some interest because, you know, when they do genuinely come through and show some quality, you think, okay, this guy, you know, could test at the very top, and that's what you want to see. And I hope we do see him, not just for the namesake, but that is an added bonus. But it's just exciting to see more people involved in that heavyweight division, in that bigger picture around those guys, to make some great fights. And then the last one to finish it off, the prospect. So we've gone for this one, has had less than 4 fights to this point. So that I suppose so they finish next year with less than the 8 in theory that we said as a prospect. So prospect less than 4 fights to watch in 2025. I suppose, Harry, you can probably just copy and paste from your other one if you so wished, with Romeo Costa. But Ben, to kick it off, who have you gone for your prospect to watch in 2025?
On these podcasts, I normally like to shout out Welsh boxers, and I haven't done so far. So my prospect to watch in 2025 is Taylor Bevan, obviously Matchroom's latest Welsh prospect, and I think we've got a couple of Welsh stars there. You know, we've got Cordina. Rhys Edwards obviously done quite well in his fight the other week, but the next one coming through now, I think, is Taylor Bevan. He impressed massively in his debut fight on the Matchroom show a few weeks ago with a really good stoppage, and I think he'll be set to have a really big 2025 and build up a bit more experience in his professional ranks and then kick on then.
Yeah, it's a great shout. He did look, you watch your prospects sometimes and they just look real quality, and I think he did on that show. Just you watched it and thought, yeah, he's got it. And do you know what? I'm not often one to put too much support on the Welsh guys, it not being my natural heritage, but I'm an adopted Welsh now, and I've gone for someone else who's an adopted Welsh. JD Cuervo, Juan David Cuervo, managed by Joe Cordina and Lee Eaton, made his debut last year, fought 3 times towards the back end of the year, and he's just got a bit about him. Whether it's in the ring or out the ring, I just think he's got that bit about him to have a great 2025 and really kick on. And you look at who he fought last in Garth Newt, in terms of a guy that's pushed Jake Tinklin, a Welsh champion, really, really pushed him. And I thought JD made a much better going of that fight than Jake did his. And so I just can't help but think he's going to have a great year. He might not be, winning the world titles in 2025 that someone like Moses Atoma might, but I think he's going to put himself in a really, really strong place, if he hasn't already done so at the back end of 2024.
Yeah, he's working with a very good stable as well. With Gary Lockett's stable, there's so many talented fighters down there, so it's going to push him to be the best version of himself as well, I think.
What about you, Harry? Finish it off.
Well, he hasn't made his professional debut yet, but he is main eventing in his pro debut. I've gone for Pat Brown, the Olympian that is finally turning over, and he's fighting in Altrincham in a couple of weeks. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do this year. And when you see an Olympian cross over into the pro ranks, normally they don't have a slow start to their career. So I'm expecting some big things for Pat. And with him main eventing, I wouldn't be surprised if the plan is for him come the back end of 2025 is that he might get a belt around his waist. And that belt being potentially the Lonsdale belt at Cruiserweight.
Yeah, I think they will really push him Matchroom. I mean, that's not a surprising thing to say based on what they've already done in terms of, like you say, giving him a main event, the announcement they gave him, the news, things like this. And I just think, yeah, he's one that definitely, if you keep an eye on him, could and should have a big 2025 for himself. And fair play for getting one in who hasn't even made their pro debut yet. That is That's a good shout. Obviously, it's not a super niche shout in Pat Brown. He just signed for the biggest promoter in the UK, arguably. But yeah, he's got a big career ahead, and hopefully a big 2025 as well.
100%, completely agree. And all these Olympians crossing over now as well. You've got Lewis Richardson. I don't know if he's signed a contract yet, but he's another one that surely makes that step now over to the pro rank. So he's another one that potentially people should be looking out for. So yeah, it's a busy year for all the Paris Olympians.
It is. It's a big year. It's a big year for boxing fans, I'm sure. We've got, God knows how we're going to top 2024 if we are. But I'm sure that Turkey will do his absolute best to do so. So thank you all for tuning in, for not just this, but tuning in for the whole year. Thank you everyone for that, for your support. If you're still around now, let us know who your fight of the year is, or what your fight of the year, knockout of the year, etc. Let us know all of that down below. Thank you all for tuning in. Follow us on all of our social medias, and we'll catch you all later in the week where we're going to be previewing Callum Simpson's fight on a Boxer Show. So thank you all. Catch you later in the week.
But punches chance. Punches Chance Podcast.